Hey, this is Nick. I've had some questions from people back home who are interested in brewing their own beer but don't understand the process. So I'm going to go through a basic Brewhouse kit, Brewhouse being the company, which is an all-green kit, which I would recommend for beginners because it's really easy. This is a kit here. This is called the basic Stout kit. It comes with 15 liters of actual wort in here, and this will brew you 23 liters of beer. So 23 liters, about 3 beers per liter. You do the math. You're going to get about 60 something beers in the end, hopefully. You might have a little bit less. Sometimes that happens depending on the actual fermentation. I usually get between 55 and 65 beers. But today, what I'm going to show you guys not only is how to use these kits, because they are really, really easy, they're pretty much fail-proof, but also I'm going to go a bit beyond that and show you how to customize these to get an even better beer. So I'm going to take this basic stout and I'm going to turn it into an Imperial Russian Stout with toasted oak cubes and bourbon. You could also add vanilla to that if you wanted to, like fresh vanilla pods, but to me that seems a little bit excessive, especially with the bourbon I'm using. So I'll start out here by opening up the kit and show you what it comes with. I'm going to walk through by explaining how to make the kit as it comes, and then also how to customize that. Let's take that out for now. So basically, what we have here is most of the ingredients. This comes with your Cooper's dry yeast. This is a pH adjuster, which is actually just made of phosphoric acid. This brew itself is slightly acidic, so this is actually a bicarbonate, 20 grams of that will make it a little bit more basic. The reason to do that, they have these wort a little bit more acidic, to kind of make it a little bit easier for beginners. It's a little bit less chance of something going wrong with it. And this is your dextrose. This is your priming sugar. You're going to see that again at the ending. So it comes with instructions, really easy. Tells you all different kinds of stuff you can use for sanitation and cleaning. And the important thing to think about here is that there's a difference between cleaning and sanitization. And some things can clean, but they don't sanitize. Sometimes sanitize, but they don't clean. There's also products to do so, but the one that I recommend that I purchased is called ChloriClean. It's made up of chlorinated trisodium phosphate. This thing here totally cost me about 12 bucks. I'm on my second batch. And one of these made me 6 or 7 batches of beer. That's including sanitizing all the equipment in the bottles. And the bottles is really important too. You're going to want to put in 15 grams of this per 4 liters, so that's not a lot. I mean, this comes with 1 kilogram, so you got tons. Also, what comes in here, I'm not going to take it out because it's heavy, is 15 liters of wort. Wort is essentially all of your hops, your sugars, and your malts, all pre-boiled for you. Some people might have extract kits, which is going to be smaller than that. But if you're starting from scratch, you have all of the ingredients that you're going to boil on the stove in a giant pot. You're going to have to know what to use, how often or how long to boil it at, what temperature to keep it at. It's a whole process, takes a whole day. This, beautiful, comes like this, no problem. It saves you a lot of time and effort and space. For me, space is a big problem. I have a little apartment here, and I mean, there's not really a lot you can do. So, as I said before, sanitization is absolutely necessary. I'm going to add water to this, so I even sanitized this as well. I mean, everything you're going to be in contact with, you're going to want to sanitize and keep it for 20 minutes. I fill this up with water. I add my specified amount of the cleaning product. So that's for 20 minutes, and you want to rinse it out because it is chlorine based. Anything chlorine based, you're going to want to clean out afterwards completely because you don't want any of that taste. And also, it can leave a white residue. This right here is my primary fermentation bucket, or a all-purpose 30-liter fermentator. Your primary fermentator, you're going to want it to be larger than your carboy. The carboy is basically what looks like a water jug that you put in a water cooler. It's got the little spout. That's where the majority of that's where your secondary fermentation is going to happen. The difference being, primary fermentation adds flavor, and secondary fermentation adds aromas, and also helps to age the beer. That's where you can age it in. So the primary fermentation is where the majority of your fermentation is going to occur. And what that means is you have the yeast, which is here, which is added last, which will be eating the sugars already in our kit, and that creates alcohol. Yeah, so another instrument, which I'm going to get in a second, is called a hydrometer, and the hydrometer will measure the gravity of the beer. And what you want to check is the OG, original gravity, before you put the yeast in for this beer, as well as the final gravity, which you will check before you bottle. And the difference between those is going to help you figure out what your actual alcohol content is, and it's a very easy calculation. You can just find that out online. I don't usually do it because I don't really care too much. It's kind of a surprise. Today I will be making a higher alcohol beer, and the way to do that is pretty simple. There's a specific amount of sugar available in this wort, in this 15 liters of wort, and that is enough to make 23 liters of beer. There's enough sugar, or there's enough yeast to eat up that sugar, as well as, yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. So what I do is I add less water in addition to this wort. So instead of 23 liters of beer, I'm going to make 18 liters of beer. Or 19 liters. I'll make 19 liters of beer, sure, why not? So 19 liters of beer. And what this essentially does is you have the same amount of yeast and sugars that are going to be, well, the sugar is going to be eaten up by the yeast, creating the same amount of alcohol with less volume. Therefore, more alcohol in a smaller amount is going to be higher alcohol content. So it's the easiest way to do it at this point. If you were going to be starting from scratch, you could just add more sugar and when you're actually brewing the hops or the malt or wort. Anyways, sorry. So I guess I'll get started here. There's a basic instructions. I'll go through it and then show you where I'm going to go differently in order to make my beer, and I will outline the differences and give you reasoning why. This is probably the most complicated beer that I'm going to be making to date, so this isn't something that I would recommend to start off with. I made 7 or 8 kits just by the book. They all end up great except for one, which that was my mistake. I didn't follow the instructions. If you follow the instructions, you sanitize, no problem. It's good. This is a great kit to use. So, first instructions: sanitize and rinse the primary fermentator, spoon, hydrometer, and test jar and thermometer. I'm already done that. Add contents of package 1 to the sanitized primary fermenter. Note: package 1 contains a pH adjuster and is essential, and if omitted, the finished product will not taste good. Do not make the kit without it. So, very basic. We take this. clean, and I emptied it out with all residual water. And you're going to try to not let anything, you don't want dust, skin, like dead skin, bacteria, hair, anything like that. Oh yeah, I cut off on my hair. And the least amount of contaminants that you can possibly get in this beer, the better. And not only the contaminants, but one major thing to think about when you're brewing beer is oxidization. Oxidization will make beer taste kind of old, like it's been, you know, when you have beer that's been left out overnight kind of thing. You don't want that. So, step 1 complete. Step 2, add 8 liters of room temperature water. Now, I boiled my water. It's not necessary. Usually this water that we have in the city is pretty good. Some people will buy already distilled water. Whatever you want. I almost always just use regular good old tap water. But for today, I did boil it. So give me 1 second, I'll be back with that. So, super easy. Water. Bucket. This is 1 liter of water. Now, as I said, I'm not adding 8 liters. We're going to add 4. There we go. There we have it. The pH adjuster has, you know, dissolved into it. I've added 4 liters. However, standard practice for this kit would be 8 liters. We're changing it up a little bit. Now we're going to add the wort into the primary fermenter and stir vigorously for 1 minute. Now, I don't feel comfortable doing this in here, so I'm going to have to move this into the bathroom. I'm going to pause the video, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to come back. But I really, yeah, it can be pretty messy, especially the first time you've done it. I'll give you a little tip of how to do this. Leave it in the box itself at first. It's easier to have 2 people. But it's got this cap on the end, and I just get a straight screwdriver, push it in, and pop it out almost all the way. You don't want to push it off because then it can actually fall in the beer. And then you're going to just twist off the end and lift up into the beer. No problem. Especially with using a stout. You don't want to be using a stout in a place like this with wood and stuff, because it's going to get messy, it's going to get sticky. So, yeah, we'll be back in 1 second. Now, as you can see, empty bladder, 15 more liters onto my 4, so I have 19 total liters of beer, times 3, it's about 60 beers still. You want to stir this in. Make sure the pH adjuster is all mixed in. You want to make sure that your water and your beer is all mixed together. And I got my giant spoon. This is going to give me an opportunity to actually get a more accurate reading for my OG. I originally forgot to stir, so I deleted that, and I got a pretty inaccurate reading for the OG, and we'll see how much it's changed. Usually I would write it down if I was going to do it. Have like a little chalkboard with all my different beers and all their gravities, but I don't think I've ever really checked the gravity before. But it's good practice. And this is basically as black as it gets. Like, this beer is going to be dark. Real dark. There's not a lot to do in the primary fermentation stage. All we do now is take the specific gravity. I'm going to let this, you know, settle down a little bit because it's still pretty bubbly, and that kind of could mess up my findings. But all we have to do at this particular point is wait till this goes down, check our specific gravity, drop in the yeast, cover the lid, and then make sure it's warm for 5 days. It says keep in here for 3 to 5 days. I'm going to keep it for 5 because I want more fermentation to happen, so it has higher alcohol content. As I said, for flavors, that you're going to get more flavors added if you add things in this stage. Now, you can do at this point what's called dry hopping. Dry hopping is getting hop pellets or leaves or whatever you have and dropping it in. And it's called dry hopping because you're not actually adding it when you're boiling the beer. Pretty simple. So if I was to add different hops at this stage, it could add different flavors and different profiles to the beer. And if doing so, I would highly recommend putting a cheesecloth or even pantyhose and putting them inside so that it doesn't dissipate everywhere into the beer and you're going to have a big mess on your hands. It's really hard to get everything out. My last beer, I didn't properly filter it out. I just dropped them all in and there's kind of hops floating around. It doesn't affect the flavor or anything like that. It still tastes fine. It's just you have floating little bits of crap in your beer, but there's nothing wrong with that. But to avoid that, yeah, put in a cheesecloth or anything that will filter it out. Then you can pop out the bag, and it's good. I don't want to do anything like that right now. Most of what I'm going to do is add in flavor or aromas in secondary fermentation. And as I stated before, you want to make sure it doesn't get oxidized. This stupid lid is bent, completely bent, because when I was very afraid of oxidization, and the first time I brewed a beer, I clamped it on with about 15 different clamps, and they would still pop off. And the reason is, there's so much fermentation occurring and so much oxygen being released that it created a huge amount of pressure and blew this off. So it's okay, you're going to have some oxygen coming in, but the majority of what's going to happen is whatever holes there is going to be where the oxygen escapes. So it's fine. You don't have to have it completely airtight, anything like that. And it states here that you want to keep your beer between 18 to 23 degrees Celsius or 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. You want your beer to be warm. The warmer it is at this stage, the better. You can cool it down later on, and what's going to happen when you're cooling your beer in secondary fermentation, it will allow all of the sediment to sit at the bottom, and that's going to make your beer really clear. You want that usually for lagers, and the term lagering comes from leaving beer in a very cold state for a long period of time, usually about 6 to 8 weeks, and that will let all of the suspended sediments settle to the bottom. So you're going to get like a Canadian or a Coors or something like that, or like a European lager or Pilsner. That's very, very clear. My beers, I don't really care. It actually doesn't do anything bad if it's not filtered. It's completely cosmetic. So, yeah. So at this stage, my beer is pretty much good to go. I'm going to get my hydrometer and show you guys how to use that. This is my hydrometer. I already cleaned it, but I already messed up and I tried to use it, but whatever. So, mercury readings along the side starts at 1.0, goes to 1.3. We spin it, and it will rise according to the gravity. Make sure the beer stops. Okay, so our OG bubbles. .75. That's great. Okay. 1.75 OG. Usually I would use the Cooper's Brewing yeast that comes with the kit. But I was lucky enough to get a present from a friend of mine who was working at the local brewery, and he got some nice liquid yeast that's used in their stout. And all I do was drop this bad boy in here. However, now I'm thinking about it, you don't want to move this once the yeast is on. So I'm going to bring this to where I'm going to be leaving it for the next 5 days, which is a warm place, and then I'll put the yeast in, because otherwise it's going to get disturbed. Okay, so this is my little brewing station. It's in a closet. It's great, takes up no space. I like to put something underneath it just in case there's is cool air coming from below, or if the people below us leave their heat off because they leave for extended periods of time, which they have done. Yeah, so you want to keep this as warm as possible. All I do, nice dark beer there. Get my yeast. And toss it in. Get all of it. The great thing about yeast, I can reuse this about 7 times. All I have to do is harvest it afterwards, which it will be left after like when I bottle my beers, and then put it back in a container with a bit of beer, and it will stay active. That's that. It's now sealed, and there we go. All done. So this in total took about a half an hour, which, given the fact that if I was doing it myself, I can do it under 10 minutes if I don't have to explain anything. So it's super easy. In the next video we'll be showing secondary fermentation, and the third part of this series will be on bottling. Alright, so this is our stout. It was fermenting for 5 days in here. You can take a look inside and see this is what it kind of looks like afterwards. All that is just from what bubbled up, and on top you can see a little bit of sediment of yeast, as well as if you look right at the bottom here, you'll see a fine line of sediment at the bottom. That's great. That's what happens to the yeast afterwards. You can actually harvest that, keep it in a brand new beer, and that could be that'll stay indefinitely. So you can reuse it 7 times if you want to. I don't know if I already mentioned that. The liquid yeast that I use, it's only going to go up to here. But if you buy one of the kits that I bought, the Brewhouse kit, the liquid or the dry yeast, the Cooper's, that's going to almost blow the top off. It's really, really, really vigorous. And that's why I'm going to age this for longer, so it makes sure that it ferments completely. So the tools that we have now, this is my secondary fermentation, my carboy. That's where everything else is going to be. This is where we're going to age the beer. It's going to sit in here until it's ready to be bottled. In addition to that, I have my siphon, which got a little bit of water. You don't want any extra water in there if you can avoid it. I also have my hose here, and I have added on my, this is my bottle insert for the end. Just added that on, and what happens is, once this pin comes off, that will let a flow, even flow of beer go, but if it's not touching anything, no beer can go through it. So that's good when you're bottling and you want to stop the beer going from one to the next. It will only start the flow of beer once it actually touches the bottom. So at this point, I'm going to transfer the beer from the primary fermenter into the secondary fermenter. But before I do that, what I'm going to do is actually add my oak cubes. These oak cubes had 1.5 ounces of Hungarian oak, which is very high in vanillin. It smells amazing. This is in 10 ounces of half Maker's Mark and half Four Roses. And you can't see, I don't know if you can actually see them. This is very, very dark. This began very, very light, and just from sitting in there and aging for a few, 4 weeks at this point, these oak cubes are completely saturated. They began as like a nice light color, a nice light tan color, and I also toasted them in the oven at 300 degrees for 2 hours, and that's going to bring out some nice flavor. So drop these guys in, and you can imagine that this isn't a necessary step at all. This is kind of a little bit of customization. I can't put that in anymore, unfortunately. That's okay. Now I'm not going to add in the bourbon at this point, because that's going to be a little bit too intense. I'm going to add the bourbon at the very ending, at the last stage, before I bottle the beer. What that's going to do is let the bourbon infuse once it's in the bottle for a good 3 or 4 months. So unfortunately this is taking a little while, but you can look online if you do want to do any toasting. There's a good chart available online. It tells you what temperature to put cubes in, and there's also cubes or chips, and that's going to change the profile that you're going to get from your oak. And essentially what this does is it kind of mimics aging a beer in oak barrels, and it's kind of something that happens a lot these days. If you like Innis & Gunn or anything like that, Innis & Gunn ages their beer for a long, like years and years in oak barrels, and not everyone has access to that. So what this does, I mean, it's not the same, you're not going to get the same complexity, but in a pinch, it definitely adds a lot of different flavors. And as well, something to mention is this is going to change over time. For the first 6 months, this is going to be really, really full of vanilla flavors. It's going to be sweet, which is very nice with the stout that I have. It's nice and even stout. And what's going to happen over time, after about 6 months to a year, that's going to switch. I don't know if you can see that there's a lot of little tiny bits of tannins of the oak floating around in there. That's going to add some nice flavors. So, got my oak all good. There's a fair bit in there, and these are actually going to dissolve over time. If I leave this in for long enough, nothing's going to be left, and that's all going to dissolve. And when those tannins, which is basically like the texture of the oak, when that dissolves into the beer, it's going to add some nice body. So, have this resting against the bottom. Make sure the pin is actually pushed. All I'm going to do is give it one nice push there, maybe a second for good measure, and there you go. It's moving. So, what I've done here, you want to make sure that whenever you're priming, which is what this is, priming or racking your beer. Racking is putting from one fermenter to the second. You want to make sure that the second vestibule that you are actually pumping your beer into is lower, and that's just going to let gravity do all the work. So all I have to do is wait until this goes all the way through, and then I guess I will continue once that's all done. Alright, so now our beer has been wrapped into secondary fermentation. You can see here, this is all leftover yeast. You can take that, all that goody stuff, and put it in a container with a bit of beer, and you can reuse it 7 times. This is what we call a bung. This is a bung, and I forget what it's called. But basically, it's got like a percolator in there so air can escape but nothing can come in. At this stage, you want to avoid all oxidization as possible. So you're going to want to make sure this is airtight. And what you're going to see over the next while is, it won't be happening yet, but over the next while you're going to see pretty good bubbling. As long as it's bubbling, that means it's fermenting. The other thing to mention is, if you are, the longer that, how do you say it? Basically, if you are using this and you're vigorously pushing, what that's going to do is that's going to suspend all the sediment into it and you're going to catch it. At this point, this is almost all just beer. You don't have a lot of the yeast, and that means that when you pour a beer and you're actually drinking it, you're not going to get yeast in your mouth. I mean, it's not a big deal. Most of my beers, you still have a little bit of yeast at the bottom, which is fine. But I like to try to avoid it as much as possible. So at this point, you're going to want to keep this elevated about a meter off the ground, so that when you do rack it again from here into bottles, you don't have to disturb anything. This is going to sit here and it's not going to move. Obviously not my kitchen, I'm going to go put it in the other room. You also want to keep it warm. Try to keep it between 18 and 23 degrees Celsius. If you want to cold crash it, you would put it outside or in a fridge that you have, and you're going to put it in there down to about 40 degrees Fahrenheit for about a week. And that's going to make sure that everything clears completely down. You'll do that for like a lager. But as this is an ale, we want to keep it nice and warm. And yeah, so that's about everything. And the next addition onto this will be bottling. Thanks. Hey, so this is the last installment of this batch. I guess you could call it Imperial Stout, or I don't know if it's a dry stout or sweet stout yet. We're going to figure that out. I can't remember exactly how I ended off. But I'm going to also add a few links on this video for a couple of the things that I'm going to be talking about. I'll get into that in a bit. I'm going to be kind of doing this as a point of view video so you can see, because I'm going to be moving around a lot. I'll start off with showing you what my current setup is at the moment. Let's have this here so I could do the video. Okay. So, over here, I gotta have this boiling. We have 1 cup of water, and I'll be adding in the dextrose into that. These are my bottles. This is all sanitized, cleaned up. Everything is perfectly sparkling clean. I also sanitized all my caps. I sanitized all this equipment. I lost my spoon, so this is my new spoon. This is my broken siphon. I have my other siphon in there. I have my hydrometer here somewhere, which isn't very important. But earlier on I did a hydrometer reading to see the final gravity of this. And it was 0.025. So it started off original gravity of 0.075 and a final gravity of 0.025. Doing the calculations, which I'll post a link for that, that means that my alcohol content at this particular moment is 6.56, which is pretty good. It's not what I wanted, but it's alright. So once that's done, I'm going to get going into adding in the sugar. But at the moment, one thing I want to mention is 0.025 is not where you want. You want a beer to be at about 0.01. So this means that this did not do a complete fermentation. And what that means is it's going to continue to ferment in the bottles, which actually means that it might explode. It's what you call a bottle bomb, which is where you just leave them in the other room and they will explode on you. So I don't want that, so I'm going to add a little bit less sugar.
the priming sugar is the last step, and then once you've done that, that's gonna make the carbonation. And I don't want to put in the full package because I did add less water. So I'm going to show a website. I'm going to link somewhere here talking about how to calculate how much you'll need. Yep. So moving on to the priming sugar. Alright, so this package comes with 0.7, no, sorry, this package comes with 170 grams. I need 145 grams for my batch, using the calculations that I've gotten. So that's about 85% of this. So I'll do what I can to measure that out. It's not going to be exact, and I'm okay with that. A bit more than 85%. Can I salvage it? No, whatever. I mean, the danger here is the bottle bomb, or what happens is you will open up your bottle and it actually will foam up a lot. Like half of the beer will foam up and kind of explode on you. So, I don't know, there's a couple steps you can do along the road. Taking care of your bottles, including actually emptying out, or putting your bottles in, I guess I'll leave that in there. Putting your bottles in the fridge a few days before you actually do drink them, and that will let them kind of settle out a bit. So that's done. That's all in there. And now our first order of business is to rack our beer. So going from our primary to secondary again. No, secondary to primary actually this time. And I guess I can maybe do this with one hand. You've already seen how I did this before, so it's not a big deal, but and it's going. Easy as that. Sorry, this has been a little bit difficult to do both things at once. I do things with one hand, but I just don't feel like sitting it down. So you can also maybe see that I've added in, it's probably impossible to see here, I added in another ounce of Hungarian cubes. And this is because I really didn't feel like there was enough of the flavor. I boiled those for 20 minutes and then I put them in. So they're just sitting on top there. You can kind of see one floating. They weren't as toasted as the other one, so that might be more vanilla and almond flavors versus a more spicier kind that I got from the really heavy toasted. That might also be some chocolate flavors in the heavily toasted ones. And because they were soaking in the maker's mark for so long, they're way down at the bottom. And the good thing about soaking them for that long is it actually is really going to help with sanitation, because oak's pretty notorious for causing issues with contamination. So, as this is going, and kind of explain my reasoning for this, I have 355 milliliter bottles, 450 milliliter bottles. I have a couple weird ones. I have 900, I have 500, and 4 liters. Why? Well, there's a few reasons. First reason is because that's what I have. Second reason is I like to have a variety. Sometimes I want one little bottle. Sometimes I like to, if you open up one of these, it's kind of an investment. When you're making a beer like this, where you put a lot of time and effort into it, you kind of want to be able to space those out for longer. So having more small bottles kind of lets you just drink one at a time as opposed to drinking a liter at a time. So that's kind of nice. The second thing, thank you very much to Mike Rennie for providing these. You're a gem. Yeah, these flip tops are awesome because you don't have to deal with any of the capping. Capping is fun though, I'll show you that later on. And these are also extremely reusable. Yeah, I only have about 8 ounces of Maker's Mark here, but I'm going to need 12 total, so I'm going to put these in, then an extra 4. And this is actually going to screw up the alcohol, the ABV, because this right now has a 6.56 ABV, and then I'm adding in about 350 milliliters, I guess, of 45% liquor. So what you can do is do a basic calculation. What's the total amount of milliliters of pure alcohol in this? What's the total amount of pure milliliters of alcohol in this? Add those up and then figure it out with the entire total volume. And what you're going to get is a total of, this is going to be a total alcohol of 7.25 or 7.3, which is pretty good. Again, it's not what I wanted initially, but that's alright. So yeah, we have our caps, we have this all going, and in a few moments I'll explain what our next step is. Okay, so it's all done. It's as black as it can possibly be. It smells like chocolate, and yeah, it smells like chocolate and coffee. And now you can see all the beautiful oat cubes, and that's the leftover yeast. And the reason, I didn't explain that before, the reason that we're putting it from here into here is, on the one hand, it's allowing for the sugars to actually, you know, meld in properly instead of putting it all in there and hoping that it mixes. This allows for a thorough, you know, blending, but it also lets us do this last little bit to sift out that sediment. So all of that sediment is not going to be in here, which means that this beer will hopefully be a little bit clearer. I did actually add a little bit in on purpose at the end in order to in the hopes that that added yeast will actually react and eat up the sugar that I've added for the priming here. That's what I did, is the priming sugar, to do a little bit more conversion of alcohol while it's in bottles. So that 7.3 might get up to, like, you know, 7.4, 7.5. But that's going to be a complete fermentation, as opposed to now it's a little bit incomplete. What I'm doing is gently mixing this with my spoon, as it should be. I'm getting that all together. Usually, well, I'm actually going to do one last reading in the hydrometer to see what my total is after about a minute of stirring. And at this particular moment, I will be adding in my bourbon, finally. Add this bad boy in there. Plus, I will be adding in 4 extra ounces. Alright, so 8. A little bit more than a shot. 9. 12. Awesome. So, now, it's bottling time. After, of course, a good additional stir. This is my capper. It's really cheap. The other ones that have a stand on them and a crank kind of thing on top, this still works, and it was half the price, which is why I bought it. It's because half the price, not because it works. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think you can see through the video, but you want to fill these up to about 1 inch down from the top, and that'll let a nice little gap for our air. I will give this one let it push just for the sake of time. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. With gravity, it's gonna go a lot faster. Oh shit. So, that's all done. And it automatically stops. Beautiful. On to the next one. And it starts again. Well, it should. Oh, that's why. I'll show you the effects of gravity. Nothing. All of a sudden, it's filling up nice and fast. So I'm an idiot. I should have been doing this from the beginning. While that's going, I'll prepare another. Oh shit, I don't even have time. Okay. There you go. This is one of our local beers. Iceberg, nice blue bottle. Don't see that very often. The bottles I picked are really thick because I'm horrified of the bottle bomb now. I don't want them exploding. So, that bad boy is going. And bust the cap. Got our caps that are sanitized. Push it on top. Bam. And just like that. Finished beer. Then with these guys, just obviously make sure that's nice and tight. And I actually clean the insides of those as well. Once you get in the groove, it's as simple as just going from one to the other with this add-on. Otherwise, you have to put the bottle up above the fermenter in order for it to stop. But this is way easier. Up like that. And there you go. And we have these pints, these 1 liters, the 6-pack regular bottles, another 6-pack, another 6-pack, 4-pack, 2-pack, and some big guys. Everything over there is just older batches. But yeah, so it's pretty big in the end. And if you actually did it by the instructions, you get another 4 liters. So that's an extra 12-pack, which is not bad. And if you space it out properly, if you do it alternating between the primary and secondary fermentation between batches, you can have this plus a 12-pack every 2 weeks ready to drink. So, any questions, let me know. Laters.